take it off of me? Yeah, her love, it was all for me. Yeah, won't you take it off of me, girl? Yeah, would you give your all for me?
There we go. Okay. Can you hear me? All right. Thank you, Jared. Man, it never fails. It's something every day. Technology, stop being such a dick. It's been a rough week, you guys. It shows. So I think we're just gonna jump right into it. Before I forget though, tomorrow is our movie screening. There I have a handful of people, and I want to apologize. I completely forgot to do the drawing for the calendar. So I did it really quickly last night, and then forgot to bring the calendar to my desk. But congratulations, Amy, you won. Our friend A Nun Maker. So I will reach out to you to get your address and stuff. So tomorrow we're going to screen that movie, 7 p.m. Eastern time. I will have the private links out to all of you that signed up, probably in the morning, either tonight or in the morning, and then I'll send it again right before, because I know how it is. You got to look through your email for that link, and it's irritating. So yeah, we'll do that tomorrow. And I'm really excited. To make sure that my little test setup worked, I did some. Oh yeah, Druid. I hope she's on. I know sometimes she's lurking there in the background. So anyway, with my little test, and it looks so interesting. So yeah, and just as a reminder, what we're going to be watching it's called Taking Venice. It is a documentary that came out last year about the Venice Biennale, which I've talked about a couple times. Giant art fair, biggest art fair in the world, been going on since the 1800s. And Robert Rauschenberg, American artist, won in 1964, right in the heart of the Cold War. And apparently there was some controversy. So, like maybe he didn't win on merit, but somebody greased some wheels or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. So we're going to find out. And yeah, it'll be a fun little Valentine's Day thing. Now, if you are doing something for Valentine's Day and want to hang out with your significant other, your sweetheart, your Valentine, that is cool. I will leave the stream up for, I don't know, a week or so that if you don't make it, you can watch it on your own time. So if you're a subscriber and you haven't signed up to see the documentary tomorrow night, tag me somewhere. You guys know where I am. I'm on Instagram. I'm obviously here. And I will keep an eye on all the spaces. So, next thing. I've been doing some cult corner work, and I have thoughts. And I think I mentioned the other day, I kind of want to separate it from this because I want to keep this focused on what we do here. But like I said, as a subscriber, you are automatically a member of this cake cult. And I think I've decided, instead of calling it a cult, C-U-L-T, we're going to call it a cult, Q-U-L-T. I like using the Q on its own. No, the English language doesn't really let you do that. And it's ironic that the second letter in cult is a U. So we're going to play with that. I have a Discord server for the Fringe Fellowship. I have an Instagram for the Fringe Fellowship. So I will disperse all of those in the coming week or so. And I hope you'll join me. I have lots of ideas. It's about spreading kindness. It's about doing what we can as needleworkers to bring about some change in our communities, whatever that means. And for me, it's an art project. It's a tongue-in-cheek, and I'm learning stuff, and we'll see if it's even worthwhile. All right. So I think that's everything that I wanted to say. I did not turn on this light over here. It's one of the things I normally do right when I get here. So let me do that, because it doesn't make much difference to you guys. I don't think that the lighting changes a whole lot, but it does for me. It makes it easier to read when I have 3 lights on versus just 1 or 2. But it is pretty funny how you can't even tell. Let's see if it makes any difference. Yeah, 0 difference. Okay, maybe a little bit difference. It gets warmer or cooler or something. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to show you some Rauschenberg stuff. I picked out, I found this very cool project at San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. They own like 80 some pieces of his work. So it's a great repository to look at things. And I picked out a few pieces that I'm going to look out closer. And some of them I know about, some of them I've really only just like looked at and don't have any like background on. So let's discover that together. And then also on Tuesday night, of course, Jill and I are reading Diary of a Dress, which I think I put on my table back there. Diary of a Dress, Anne Sykes, an Englishwoman who lived in Singapore for a while, and it's about her dress scrapbook, her fabric scrapbook. And mentioned in the book is Englishwoman's Domestic Magazine. And I knew that these magazines existed. They are contemporary to Godey's in the United States. And Jill found it available online. I think it's just a couple of volumes of it, but I started paging through it the other night, just, out of curiosity and trying to figure out like how comparable is this to Godey's. Oh, it's very comparable. It's very similar to Godey's in the way that it's laid out and just the ridiculousness of stuff in here. So I want to read some to you guys. So depending on time, I'll read some and then I'll save some for another time. Trust me when I say it is good stuff. One piece I had to read to myself, and I just could not help doing it in this like bizarre transatlantic accent, despite the fact I know this is supposed to be like 1840 or something. So anyway, let's do that first because these things are so ridiculous. Let me find, so I can tell you, I have a link for it. I think this is it. Yeah. We found it on the Hathi Trust. Let's see if, hopefully this is going to give us what. Yeah. Okay. So this is the main record page for the magazine, and then you could scroll down and see other volumes of it. So let me put that in the chat. Because it's fun stuff. It's good stuff. Hopefully that link isn't funky. Let me know if that link is weird, but I think it'll work. And the turns of phrase in this thing are so funny. So they have these little what do you call it in a magazine? Columns or segments, pieces. One is called Things Worth Knowing. Notices to correspondence, which are a complete mystery. It's kind of like the classifieds. Back in the day when you, I guess, like missed opportunities or something, and it would be in the classifieds and be like, if you were at the bus station on Tuesday, standing next to the blue trash can, let's talk, or something like that. Like, I don't know. This is what these things seem to be, and they are bizarre. Also, there's wisdom and wit. Wisdom are, some of them, yeah, they're kind of wise. Wit, my word, the mid-1800s had some very interesting humor. And then we have these two pieces. One is called How to Get a Husband. This was the piece I was reading to myself the other night. I just could not stop in this ridiculous, like, Katharine Hepburn kind of accent. And then the other part of this, which I know we will not have time for today, but I think is really funny. So we've got how to manage a husband, and then how to get a husband, and then how to manage a husband. How to manage a husband appears to be more of like a story, whereas how to get a husband is a letter to the editor, apparently. So let us look at, and you know what? One of these I completely forgot to print. So let me do that really quickly because it is so good. So there's also one called Cupid's Letter Bag. And these are all about like, what am I supposed to do? It's like Dear Abby for the young and romantic or whatever. So very funny. And then we have something called a toilette, which is all about, beauty stuff. It is so very, now my printer wants to be a jerk. It's so very, it corresponds to today's magazines. It really does. And, oh, of course my printer is out of paper. Why would there be paper in the printer? Okay, let me see if I can get some paper shoved in there. So anyway, it's some good stuff, you guys. I want you to hear it in all of its glory. So, okay. Let's see if I can get this into the back of the printer without knocking everything I own over. And sorry. I'm sure there's lots of horrible noises. Okay. All right. This is why we don't print things midstream. This is why we do what we're supposed to do before the stream. Okay. So while that prints, let me read you some wit and wisdom. All right. So, intended for certain audiences. Is this still... Now, there are no sexual themes in this stream. I'm still getting that, you guys. Hopefully you're able to watch my stream without having to prove you're an adult. Okay. So here's some wisdom. Quarrels. 2 things well considered would prevent many quarrels. First, to have it well ascertained whether we are not disputing about terms rather than things. And secondly, to examine whether that on which we differ is worth contending about. So, are we really arguing? And is it worth it? I like that. That's actually very good advice. This one is called disguise. Were we to take as much pains to be what we ought to be as we do to disguise what we really are, we might appear like ourselves without being at the trouble of any disguise at all. Okay. What if I don't want people to know who I really am? Let's see, or what I really am. Let's see. Who's the next one? Domestic intercourse. In our daily intercourse with our families, a trifling circumstance might reveal to us a feature of our character, which, till then, we did not know existed, just as a feather thrown into the air will blow which way the wind blows when a weightier substance would fall. Very, very erudite. The philosophy of patience. He who can wait for what he desires takes the course not to be exceedingly grieved if he falls of it. He, on the contrary, who labors after a thing too impatiently, thinks the success when it comes is not a recompense equal to all the pains he has been at about it. All right, so now wit. When Rabelais was on his deathbed, a consultation of physicians was called. "Dear gentlemen," said the wit to the doctors, raising his languid head, "let me die a natural death." This sounds like something that comes out of like Reader's Digest. Am I right? Here's an interesting one. And it's kind of obnoxious because it's making fun of French people. But it's interesting because of the word that they have in here. A French gentleman was one day caressing a dog when an English friend remarked that he seemed very fond of it. Yes. He says yes. Y-A-A-A-S. Yes, I love the dogs, the cats, the asses, and the asses. So I guess asses would be like an ox or bovine. Asses, of course, being a donkey. And in short, I do love everything that is beastly. Oh, that's bizarre. Okay. Let's see. Oh, take warning. The lady who lost her eyesight by reading a borrowed ladies' domestic magazine has recovered it since she became a subscriber. Sneaky, sneaky. Caution to mothers. An old soaker down east accounts for his perpetual thirst from the fact that he was weaned on salt fish. Definition of a low-bred woman. One who stays at home, takes care of her children, and never meddles with the business of her neighbors. Right? Okay. So, let's look at a couple of things worth knowing. How to drill holes in China. Well, that's helpful. You have to... and why would you drill holes in China? Here's why. When holes are required to be drilled in china or earthenware for the purpose of riveting it when broken. So this is interesting because you think about the fact, like today, if we drop a plate, break a cup, if it's a tchotchke and it's something you love, most people will, get some super glue it back together. But you know what? Like if it's a drinking cup and it like just shatters, what's the point? What's the point of keeping that? There isn't one. You throw it away, you get a new one. But back in the day, just as fabric was expensive, so were other things. And so great pains were made to fix things. So this is something that's worth knowing. However, you have to basically make yourself a device to drill holes in China. And this involves using a drill made of a splinter of diamond set into a handle. And my whole thing is, like, if you have a splinter of a diamond, is it really that big of a deal that you need to mend your earthenware? If you don't have a splinter of a diamond, you can procure a 3-cornered file, which is something that we use today. I actually have some for metalworking. You harden it completely by making the end red hot and plunging it in cold water. That is a method for hardening steel. Then you grind it to a point. And then, grind it to a point on a grindstone and then on an oil stone. So that would be getting it sharper and sharper with finer and finer materials. Then with the point of this tool, prick repeatedly on the spot to be bored, taking care not to use too much violence, lest the object should break. How to remove stains from floors. This involves taking equal parts of fuller's earth and pearlash, which has got to be some kind of, acid or alkaline mixture that is so bad for you. You're supposed to put this on your floor and leave it there for a while. How to make spongy bread without yeast. What to do about scorbutic eruptions. How to whiten linen or calico. It goes on. I mean, these are now let us look at toilette, because some of the things worth knowing and toilette seem to we have mentioned how people could just go to their druggist and buy things like arsenic and all sorts of acids and lies and stuff. So how about this one? Acetic acid. Well, I think acetic acid is, it's in the realm of citric acid, I think. I don't think it's terrible, but I think when you're going with strong forms of acetic acid, you could be in some trouble. But this is what they say for warts. These are got rid of in various ways. Some tie a thread round their base, but a better plan is to have a piece of thick paper with a hole cut in it, the size of the wart. This is put over the wart, and then every morning, a drop or two of the strongest acetic acid should be dropped through the hole upon the wart. If this do not succeed, dropping oil of vitriol in the same way will answer. Now, oil of vitriol is sulfuric acid. Oh, yes, vinegar. That's right. Vinegar is acetic acid. Okay, so I guess even a strong vinegar. I mean, I suppose if you have, any kind of cut on your hand or something, like vinegar doesn't feel good. But yeah, you're right. Acetic acid is not. Acetic acid as vinegar, like citric acid, like from citrus. So, okay. Those things would not kill you. But I'm supposing sulfuric acid is not something you want on your hands. To clean a foul sponge, when very foul, wash them in dilute tartaric acid. The household must have been chock full of acid back in the day. Rinsing them afterwards in water. It will make them very soft and white. Be careful to dilute the acid well. Now, I'm curious to know, what kind of sponges were they using? I'm guessing these are natural sea sponges. In the 1800s, did they have the cellulose sponges we have today? I don't think so. Now, here's my absolute favorite. I'm starting to get the grays, and I've been thinking, like, maybe I'll henna it or something. Here's a recipe for hair dye. The injurious character of many of these dyes is well known. One said to be free from this defect, and now in general use, is composed as follows. Powder well in a mortar some litharge or vitrified oxide of lead with some lime. These mix in water in the proportion of 85 parts by weight of the former to 15 parts of the latter. I mean, I can see myself going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 78, 79. Oh my God. The manner of using it is as follows. Wash the hair with warm water and soap to free it from grease, then dry it well. The hair is then to be covered with this mixture of the consistence of cream, beginning at the roots. 4 folds of soft brown paper are then to be placed over the whole and secured by an oilskin cap. Oh, Druid. Okay, cellulose sponges were first developed in the 1940s by the DuPont Company. Okay, so yeah, I thought they were fairly recent. That makes sense. So I suppose all sponges up to that point are either going to be, well, sea sponges. I can't think of anything else that would necessarily work for a sponge. Okay, so you're sitting there with basically oxide of lead on your hair. And you've got some paper secured with an oilskin cap. The hair must remain in this condition from 3 to 6 or 8 hours. I can't even. According to the depth of shade required, my question is, what shade is this going to make your hair? Are you going to be a bleach bottle blonde now? Are you going to, is this just covering your grays? What color is this dyeing your hair? And the cap may then be removed. Some of the dye will fall out, possibly with some of your hair. And the rest must be combed and brushed out when the hair is dry. Do not wash the hair with water for 3 or 4 days, as it irritates the skin, as does lead. As the hair grows, the parts next to the roots will be undyed. I know, girl. It's a struggle. And will require the whole to be redyed every 3 to 4 months. So be sure, stock up on lead and sulfuric acid so that you can take care of your warts and hair. Let's see, I think that was everything. I think the recipes. So there are receipts for cookery here, but there wasn't anything too terribly interesting in that. Let's read some of the Cupid's letter bag. This is the Dear Abby, or the Dear Ann Landers of 1840s. So Laura S. from Hampton Court says, I am being constantly scolded by a maiden aunt for showing a preference for the society of 2 gentlemen at the same time. Oh, Laura, you skank. I assure her there can be no harm in it, for, as I flirt with both, neither can accuse me of showing a preference. Is it wrong, think you, to laugh and joke with an agreeable young man or two when you are not engaged? The respondent, which we don't, other than Cupid, I don't know who this respondent is, but they say, Laura, beware. Cupid cannot countenance such coquetry. Make your decision and be steadfast in your love. You will do well to remember that a coquette is a rose from which every lover plucks a leaf. The thorns are left for her future husband. Oh my gosh. Does that sound like some slut shaming? Jessie A. from Brompton says, I am about to be married, but am sorely afraid of being compelled to give up going to balls, of which I am excessively fond. My intended husband is a very quiet turn of mind, while I have a great taste for pleasure. Do you not think I should be wrong to marry? The respondent says, we are quite sure that if Jessie could be happy, her husband would not. It seems odd enough that while young ladies are so sedulously taught all the accomplishments that a husband disregards, they are never taught the great one he would praise. They are taught to be exhibitors. He wants a companion. Let Jessie remain single until she can learn the disregard of self. Jessie? Rebecca from Portsmouth says, I have been engaged to a gentleman with the sanction of my parents for 1 year. He has now, quite unexpectedly, received an appointment abroad, where he is bound to remain 5 years. Would it be well to engage myself for so long a term? The respondent says, the very fact that Rebecca asks this question dictates our answer. Decidedly not. Where true love exists, time and distance are nothing. Mary A. from Chichester says, at a friend's house, I occasionally meet a young man who, I am informed, entertains a strong attachment for me. I have sometimes thought it might be so before I was told of it, but he is so extremely diffident that, while hoping, I have still feared to give encouragement. And the response is, if Mary be charitable, she will by all means encourage this sighing swain. A really diffident man we regard as a rara avis, a rare bird. We fondly hope, however, from what she says, that the species is not wholly extinct, and that the following lines are descriptive of the love shown by such a being. There's a language that's mute. There's a silence that speaks. There's something that cannot be told. There are words that can only be read on the cheeks, and thoughts which the eye can unfold. So basically, Mary, this dude likes you, and if you're smart, you're gonna go ahead and let him do what he pleases. Let's see. I'm trying to see. I think there was. Yeah, I think the other one was one that I didn't print. So, yeah, we will have to come back to some of these. They are good. Now, let us read how to get a husband. How to get a husband. Dear Mr. Editor, what do you think I found the other day? You can't guess, I'm sure. It was a bundle of papers bound round with a dirty piece of tape, and a little bird tells me that they were intended for your office. There was some writing outside, which I thought at first was an address, but would you believe it? I found upon closer inspection that it was actually labeled The Way to Get a Husband by a Young Bachelor. Of course, after that, I took the parcel home. And now I want to tell you, dear Mr. Editor, the thoughts and feelings that assailed me whilst I examined its contents. Well, the idea, did you ever? Remember, this is 1840-ish. A young bachelor going to tell us what we ought to do to get a husband, just as if he can know anything about it. Oh, his impudence. I should like to see him, that's all. Wouldn't I tell him what I thought of him, a saucy, disagreeable thing? I really get quite in a passion when I think of it, I do. I'm in a good mind not to look at what he has had the face to say. Never mind, I'll just have a peep into it, on purpose to expose him afterwards with his impudence. Well, I wonder how he begins. Oh, here it is. Why, it's a letter addressed to Tom Draw. What does he mean by saying he'll tell us how to get a husband, and that it's only a letter to some disagreeable man or other that he knows? Very likely Tom Draw, as he calls this horrid wretch, and I'm sure he is a horrid wretch, is some dreadful medical student or other. I'm sure the name is very studenty, and then perhaps the letter isn't fit to be read. I do believe the men write horrid things to one another in their long letters, very long and disagreeable when we don't see what's in them. And then that alters the case. Oh, I will just have one look, and then if it isn't proper, just at the very beginning, I won't read any more. Dear Tom, it commences. Well, there isn't any harm to that. What a fellow you are not to have come down to Eltham on Sunday, as I asked you to do, and as you said you would. By Jove, you should have seen 2 girls that dined with us at our house. You have often told me that you don't think there's a girl in Christendom who could make the least effect on your stony heart. But if either of those delicious pairs of eyes, the property of the above girls, had fastened on you for a second or two, you would literally have been hooked and eyed, I can assure you. They've been to Germany, to Heidelberg, to be educated. I heard this before I was introduced to them, and expect to see 2 fearfully affected girls, with no other idea existing in their heads but that they had been on the continent, and that they desired all created beings to be cognizant of that particular fact. But Tom, I was delighted, and so I am sure would you have been, to see 2 of the most neatly and prettily dressed girls I have ever met rise gracefully at our approach. Bob dined with us. And without the least affectation to receive the expression of our delight at our introduction. Oh, Tom, if the girls only knew how damaging to themselves is that horrid affectation which some of them delight in, I feel quite sure that they would be as free from it as the 2 heroines of my letter. Oh, how cross he writes! I shouldn't like him for a husband. I'm sure I should be quite afraid of him, that I should, and isn't he conceited, too, talking about affectation and us girls, as he calls us. He's quite perfect, no doubt, and never does anything wrong. Well, I know I'm not affected, although I did hear Marian tell Nellie I was. I know she's more affected than me, and she's a story if she says she's not. I'm getting quite into a passion with this brute of a letter. I won't read any more of it, I won't. There isn't much more of it, though, so I'll just finish. I sat between my 2 new acquaintances during dinner and was quite charmed by their modest freedom of manner, by their shrewd remarks and pretty faces. One of them has the most beautiful hand, Tom, I ever saw. I've not been able yet to get a glimpse of her feet. But I'm quite certain they will be worthy of companionship with the fairy fingers she possesses. I mention these particulars, Tom, because I know you hold in sacred reverence a pretty hand and a well-turned ankle. And I do wish most heartily to try on your adamantine breast the effect of the charms of these lovely unaffected creatures. Let me know when you'll be down, and I'll arrange, if I can, a picnic at some pretty little spot in the vicinity. We'll have a jolly day, tripping it over the flowery meads and rejoicing in the merry sunshine until the shades of evening close around and bid us gather up the remnants of the feast, and finding, or not finding, parasols, shawls, mantles, and the endless paraphernalia pressed into the service of a woman's wardrobe, we'll close our day. Oh my. During which I hope to see the conquest of your heart commence. Adieu, Tom. Write to me by return of post. Yours truly, Frank Burton. P.S. Have you any fun at Greenwich the other day? Of course you were there as usual. Tom, my boy, when will you see the error of your ways and cease your disreputable mode of seeking entertainment? Oh. Oh, Tom, what were you up to? Well, dear Mr. Editor, when I come to the conclusion of this letter, I didn't certainly think that Frank Burton had showed us much of the way to get a husband. But still, I rather liked reading it. It was so nice, wasn't it, to get a peep into one of those bachelor's letters that I had so long desired to see. And here was a delicious treat for me. Not one letter alone, but a lot. And I could read them all through, and nobody knew anything about it. I haven't told Ma about them, and I do hope that you won't tell anyone who I am, although I have sent you my right address so that you may register it, because of the watches, one of which I intend to gain, of course. I don't know what's up with these watches, but she wants one. Oh, I was forgetting all about these letters. I was thinking so of the watch that I am to have. The next I see is a letter to Frank from Tom. I'm getting so used to them now that I shall call them by their Christian names. His writing looks as if his hand shook very much. I think he is a dissipated fellow from what Frank said about his being so certain to go to Greenwich Fair. Dear Frank, so you have found, as usual, some more beauties. Indeed, you must be in a most lucky vein, or you see with eyes in the same condition as those of small schoolboys, who fancy the dustiest and dirtiest blackberries they meet the most delicious dessert. Let a girl only behave herself with common courtesy. Let her listen somewhat attentively to any of your small talk, and into the bargain let her exhibit just so much taste in her costume as to be above vulgarity. And straightway my unsophisticated friend of Eltham imagines he is enjoying the smiles and eliciting the admiration of a charmer, in whose company it is perfectly impossible to enter without being immediately sensible of the immense powers the said fair one possesses to enchain the heart and rule one's destiny. Well, Frank, I don't know whether the girls of the last generation were superior to those now in existence, but I have a shrewd suspicion that they were so, for as I cannot imagine that either your paternal relation or my own, judging from what they now are, would have risked the happiness of their whole lives, and have incurred also the probability of possessing an average growth of such olive branches as yourself and your humble servant, I do think they would not have hazarded all of this if the young ladies of that period had not presented to their youthful eyes more of the qualities requisite to form a companion for life than those non-entities in millinery. This is rude, Tom! Those lackadaisical specimens of female humanity whom I have found, you appear to be more fortunate, to constitute the great majority of that section of the genus Homo which Mrs. Ellis calls the daughters of England. I was agreeably astonished to find by your letter that you should go so far as to admit that there is one failing which the girls of this period exhibit to a pretty considerable extent, vis-a-vis affectation. Affectation. You have written a sensible thing for once. I am glad to see this, for it leads me to entertain some hope of your ultimate recovery from the foolishly found attachment to anything and everything appertaining, I think this is a typo, appertaining to the fair sex, which I had begun to think was with you a chronic complaint. But to continue my remarks with regard to affectation, Frank, I think the slightest display of it is at once a certain proof of the emptiness of the individual's head, and exhibits a want of sense and knowledge which cannot be too much despised and ridiculed. Affectation cannot please any but fools, and these are not worth pleasing. By the way, he's talking about the women of a generation previous. He's talking about his own mother. And granted, he is saying that the previous women were better than the women of today, but still, my God, Tom and Frank, I don't like you. It requires also a great deal of trouble and much practice to get it up well. What are you talking about, Tom? And I entertain the opinion that there exists in the entire transaction an enormous outlay of time and anxiety, without at all an adequate return of advantage or satisfaction. Oh, you had to take him to dinner, did you, Tom? In commercial phrase, it doesn't pay. I hope there will yet be someone who will rise from the ranks of our countrywomen and teach her sex. The natural grace is the sweetest of all graces and more winning than all accomplishments. I have nothing to do next week, Frank, so I will come down to Eltham and stay with you a day or two. I doubt not we shall be able to arrange a ball and feet, for French, a ball or an affair, and feel sure I shall be much amused in watching your enthusiastic worship of your two divinities. I hope I shall not find your swans are crows. Rude! But fear that will be the result of my observation. I will not form, however, any opinion prejudicial to your goddesses, but will take care to notice diligently and report fairly. Yeah, Tom Draw probably dated a lot of butterfaces, am I right? But we'll take care to notice diligently and report fairly. Shall see you most likely on Saturday evening, and with kind regards to all my Eltham friends, believe me, yours truly, T. Draw. Dear Mr. Editor, I can't write any more now, although I did wish to say something about Tom's letter, for Papa has just come home and is calling out for his slippers. So I must go and find them for him. Goodbye. I will send you 2 more of the letters next week in time for you to publish. So first of all, whoever this woman is, I like her. I like the cut of her jib. Now, these 2 guys, no offense to any guys out there, but these 2 guys of the mid-1800s are so very much like dude bros today. We just read letters between 2 dude bros from like almost 200 years ago. So you're welcome. The more things change, the more they stay the same. All right, guys. Moving on to our next diversion. Let's talk about Rauschenberg. So, let me get the other screen. And, poops. I forgot to move this around. Bear with me. Okay. So, what we have here is the Rauschenberg Research Project, which was something I had never seen before. So let me share the link. And apparently, so there are all these contributing authors. So basically, let me just read the intro to it for you so that you can kind of understand what this is. So the Rauschenberg Research Project provides free worldwide access to a wealth of scholarly research and documentation relating to artworks by Robert Rauschenberg in San Francisco Museum of Modern Art's permanent collection. The museum's holdings span the artist's career from 1949 to 1998 and includes combines, which combines are his multimedia pieces, and that's where he used quilts. I believe there's 2 pieces that use quilts. The most famous being Bed, which you guys have seen. I've shown it to you. I've bitched about it. But it's an interesting piece. So the pieces, the holdings include combines, sculptures, paintings, photographs, and prints, and other works on paper. A rich range of materials surrounds the featured works, including newly commissioned essays, numerous images, interview footage, artist statements, conservation reports, and archival materials, which together provide new insights into the artist's work. These resources may be accessed through the orientation points below. The Rauschenberg Research Project was produced by SF MoMA under the auspices of the Getty Foundation's online scholarly catalog initiative with the support of the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation. So I love this. I love the stuff that the Getty does in these, what's the word I'm looking for? Their initiatives to get stuff out there. And we look at a lot of museums, and many museums, like the art museums, really have a lot of their stuff online. I think that was becoming a thing before the pandemic, but really went into hard drive during the pandemic. So this is good stuff. Just scroll down here. You could see all of the pieces that they actually have. And they have one that is very, very important in the Robert Rauschenberg world. And then a very interesting series I knew nothing about. A series that makes me laugh. And some of his final later work, which became sort of different. And you could see that these are in order of date. Some of them have images that are not available. And I don't know if it's because I haven't opened these. I don't know if it's just the thumbnail's not there or the whole image isn't there. But you can see how these things change from the very beginning. This is the latest, the most recent piece. I think he died in 98 or 99. So, this is the most recent piece. Looking at that, and then I'll just quickly scroll back up here and just look at these other pieces. They're very different, but there's also a through line in the way Rauschenberg did things. And I think that is that's the mark of an artist, is that their work changes over time, yet there's still elements of it that stay the same. And that's like the artist fingerprint. And the artist spirit is what you see as those things change. So, I pulled up, okay, okay. So this is the one I want to talk about first. And let me make it big. This might be one of his, well, I don't want to say it's one of his most important works, because it's not. It's not actually one of his most important works. But it is an important work. So I'm just gonna read this one to you because it's a very famous piece. The piece is called Erased de Kooning, right? Erased de Kooning drawing, 1953. This is, Robert Rauschenberg is still kind of he's getting famous, but he's still kind of like a kid in the art scene. He's not long out of Black Mountain College, which was in Asheville, North Carolina. It's not there anymore. I don't think it lasted until the 60s. It was just a period in time that this art school existed, and a lot of famous people went there. So this piece, which this is the kind of thing that I know, my father doesn't get art and just doesn't understand. And I know he would look at this and go, "What in the absolute F is this? This isn't art." But let me tell you what this is. So from 1951 to 1953, Robert Rauschenberg made a number of artworks that explore the limits and very definition of art. These works recall and effectively extend the notion of the artist as creator of ideas, a concept first broached by Marcel Duchamp with his iconic ready-mades of the early 20th century. So I don't have a picture of that stuff, but Marcel Duchamp is, this absurdist kind of realm. So you've got the surrealist, and Marcel Duchamp, I think, was really more of an absurdist. The ready-mades were basically things he found, hung on a wall, and signed them. And you have probably seen the urinal. That's the one he's really famous for. And then I want to think there's something else, I can't remember what it is, like a bicycle seat or something random like that. But the urinal is the one that most people know. And early 20th century, but nonetheless has always been controversial, because just like duct taping a banana to a wall, people look at stuff like that and go what in the hell? You call that art? So this is where he's extending this notion of this idea. With Erased de Kooning, Rauschenberg set out to discover whether an artwork could be produced entirely through erasure, an act focused on the removal of marks rather than their accumulation. Now, this is something that is interesting to think about, because, you just think about in fashion. They always say put on all your stuff and then take off one thing or take off, it's about paring down and about, keeping things spare. And if you think about modern quilts, that's one aspect of modern quilting, is what can you strip something down to and how do you use negative space? So this idea of removing everything that doesn't make sense or isn't compelling or doesn't put voice to your idea. So Rauschenberg first tried erasing his own drawings, but ultimately decided that in order for the experiment to succeed, he had to begin with an artwork that was undeniably significant in its own right. Now this is just a drawing. This isn't something that de Kooning exhibited, but at this time period, de Kooning is a big deal. He is like the grand master, with his disciples. He approached Willem de Kooning as an artist for whom he had tremendous respect and asked him for a drawing to erase. Somewhat reluctantly, de Kooning agreed. And I have actually read into Kooning's biography, he kind of like made a big show of it, of like, well, okay, you can have this one. Oh, no, not that one. No, not that one. We'll do this one. Maybe not that one. Literally took him like several hours, I think, if I remember correctly, to find this piece to give Rauschenberg. Somewhat reluctantly, de Kooning agreed. After Rauschenberg completed the laborious erasure, and this took him a long time, he was being very careful not to ruin the paper. So this isn't like just taking a pencil and just erasing. This was very meticulous erasure. So after Rauschenberg completed the laborious erasure, he and fellow artist Jasper Johns devised a scheme for labeling, matting, and framing the work, with Johns inscribing the following words below the now obliterated de Kooning drawing. And so that's this little tiny label right here. Jasper Johns put that there. And it says, "Erased de Kooning drawing, Robert Rauschenberg, 1953. The simple gilded frame and understated inscription are integral parts of the finished artwork, offering the sole indication of the psychologically loaded act central to its creation. Without the inscription, we would have no idea what it is in the frame. The piece could be indecipherable." So they go on to say that MoMA used a range of digital capture and processing technologies to enhance remaining traces of the original de Kooning drawing. So you can actually see, there's a little bit of kind of, fuzziness, and there's some spots and things here. This effort was intended not only to address our instinctive curiosity about what Rauschenberg erased, but also to enable us to better understand what he grappled with, literally and figuratively, when he decided to erase the work of an artist he admittedly idolized. Because de Kooning used erasure heavily in his own drawings, it is possible that some traces made visible through the technology were actually erased by him as part of the original drawing before it entered Rauschenberg's hands. However, the resulting image reveals a field of marks that is far from a finished drawing or even a focused study. Instead, we see de Kooning's work in process, thinking with his pencil and charcoal. Multiple figures fill the sheet, oriented in two directions. The female figure at the lower left, so I think that's this. The female figure in the lower left is likely related to the Woman series, with which de Kooning was deeply involved from 1950 to 1955. The sight of this approximation of de Kooning's drawing ultimately does not transform our understanding of Rauschenberg's finished artwork. The power of erased de Kooning drawing derives from the allure of the unseen and from the enigmatic nature of Rauschenberg's decision to erase a de Kooning. Was it an act of homage, provocation, humor, patricide, destruction, or, as Rauschenberg once suggested, celebration? Erased de Kooning drawing eludes easy answers, its mysterious beginnings leaving it open to a range of present and future interpretations. So that is erased de Kooning drawing. Um, so next is, let's see, this one. And some of these, they're interesting to me because maybe not necessarily because I love the way they look, but because there are aspects of these things that are really interesting. And so this one is called Sky Garden Stoned Moon, 1969. So what's interesting about this is Rauschenberg was invited to NASA. He went to Cape Canaveral so this was July 1969, and he was invited there to witness the launch of Apollo 11. And he was asked by the NASA art program. Did you know that NASA had an art program in the 60s? So asked by the NASA art program to commemorate the first manned spaceflight to the moon. And he enjoyed unrestricted access at NASA's Florida facilities. And so basically, like, he roamed around, he took photographs, you can see in this, like, some of this is technical documentation here. And then some of this is like a postcard. This is like a print from a postcard. So, very collagey. However, this is a print. And what I think is really most exciting about this is its scale. This is the size of a bed quilt. This thing is like, let's see. Where is the size? Artwork info. It is 89 inches by 42 inches. Bed is a very similar size. So it's really interesting to see Rauschenberg using these, like, long, skinny shapes. Not to say other artists didn't do stuff like that, but it's interesting to see him do this. And what is really interesting about this is at the time that this piece was made, it was the largest lithograph pulled, I believe. Let's see. Yes. At 89 inches in height, Sky Garden was the largest hand-pulled lithograph ever created when it was printed in 1969. So the printing plate that this thing used was enormous. And it says, and so Stoned Moon, of course, is all of this NASA stuff. And there are, 34 lithographs. And SF MoMA has 29 of them. Or 29 of the prints. So with prints, you can make multiple copies and they'll look alike. Printmaking is such an interesting form of art because, is it painting? Is it collage? Is it something else? There's so many different types of printmaking. Like, I used to love collography, which is where you basically make a collage of objects on a printing plate and then pull prints off of it. But this is lithography, where historically you literally scribe, like, on a stone. You're creating this image on a stone, and you treat the image with like an acid that kind of eats away, and then you treat that part that's not eaten away, and it, what you treat it with then makes the ink stick. So it's interestingly not as old of a process as I had originally thought, but modern lithography uses metal plates instead of stone. Can you imagine an 89-inch piece of stone? Like, that's impossible to work with. So I believe this one says it was a print studio that helped him with this. They're master printers. And so it required 2 lithographic stones, 4 aluminum plates, and a silk screen to produce the scale and visual effects that he wanted. So this is just one in a whole bunch of these. And I'm not pulling them all up, but I'll scroll through. Let's see. Stoned Moon starts here, I think. So, and these are all lithography. I think there might be 1 or 2 photos. But like really interesting. So like you can see like this one, you see like I'm guessing this is Apollo 11, and then you like a bird, a Florida Everglades bird. Um, so very interesting. Like this is like a weirdly um, developed picture that then he's put on on the substrate and so on. Now the stone moon poster is the next thing, which I think is interesting. It's honestly quite tacky in my opinion. This is something that they created, NASA created. This is a poster that shows all of the prints that he made for NASA. And so this one is the Sky Garden. That's this one right here. And you can see the other ones are mostly, normal looking sized things. And then we have this other one that's really long and skinny here too. So, let's see. There's not a whole lot about this one. This one just says it was created to publicize his Stoned Moon series. And the pieces were created between 1969 and 1970. So I think that was everything about this. It was made as Rauschenberg approached completion of the second phase of the prints. Here, the entire series appears in miniature, arranged against a backdrop composed from maps of the John F. Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral. So you can see in some of this stuff, these little things appear, I think, in these prints. So, but also kind of tacky. Now this one is one of my favorites. It makes me laugh. This one is called Goat Chow. These are his chow bags from the 1970s. And so he had done a number of like cardboard and feed bag assemblages or collages. And this series, specifically chow bags, was chow bags for weird animals. So we've got like mink chow and goat chow and hog chow. These bags they're the Ralston Purina bags that, I mean, even today you get your dog and cat chow in these kind of bags. It's just funny though. These goats are like, yeah. Now what's really interesting is this is not an actual collage. This is a print of a collage. So, and I don't know what form of printing this is. Let's see. It's a screen print. And it let's see if I can zoom in here. Oh yeah, here we go. You can kind of see when you get up really close that this is a screen print, because you can see like the green of this kind of being used, in the goats' faces. Also, this, I believe, up here is like some kind of leaf. It looks like one of the skeleton leaves. So goat chow. All right. Now the next one is interesting because it is fabric. It is using fabric, exploring fabric. This is sand from the Hoarfrost edition, 1974. And he has used image transfer to fabric. And what this is, so the hoarfrosts are a group of unique solvent transfer works on silk, inspired by the sheets of cheesecloth commonly used to clean ink from lithographic stones during rounds of printing. Sand is part of Rauschenberg's Hoarfrost edition, 1974, a related suite of 9 prints on unstretched fabric made in collaboration with the same printmakers that he did a lot of other work with. I think it's GEL, Gemini GEL is the print studio, and it seems to me like he worked with them from the late 60s through the 70s, just based on the work that I've looked at. They mention that, so, and you could see kind of these marks here are kind of like blobs of ink, perhaps. Um, it says that sand combines a watery layer of chiffon with a smooth silk panel that is covered with barely legible solvent transfer images and text from newspapers. The largest image, a hand pulling a squeegee across a pane of glass, which I think is this. It's really hard to tell because they're very ghostly. Simultaneously alludes to both the transparent nature of the piece and the repeated gestural processes inherent to printmaking. So where this comes from, so where the title comes from, is so he spent 2 years in the late 50s illustrating Dante's Inferno in a series of transfer drawings, and he knew the text well. He likely came across the word hoarfrost, and that's spelled Hoarfrost, in this passage from Canto 24. In that part of the young year, when hoarfrost mimes the image of his white sister upon the ground. So, that's the frosty stuff that's on the grass. The gossamer delicacy of the Hoarfrost series works echoes the fleeting presence Dante describes. Rauschenberg was a somewhat of a literary man, and a lot of artists in his time were. This piece is called Hiccups. And this one is really interesting. These are prints on handmade paper. There are 97 sheets in this piece. And basically they can be unclipped and they can be moved around and put in different rows. They can be stacked. And what I think is so interesting about this is I think about quilt blocks, and I think about when you make something that is maybe scrappy and you want to avoid color pooling, or the blocks can kind of go together different ways. And so you maybe have a design wall, or you clear off a spot on your dining room table or on the floor, and you're putting these pieces together and you're stacking them and moving around. And that's what this reminded me of. It's almost like a memory game. You could kind of play with it, and that's what this struck me as being. And it's just like they're like, I don't know, they're like magazine clippings. I don't know where exactly these images are from, but that's just kind of it's just kind of random. And it says, each panel presents a unique composition of images, sometimes overlaid with sheer scrims or brightly colored snippets of fabric and ribbon. And these are gathered from popular magazines, sprayed with solvent and run through a lithographic press. So basically like just pressing them onto that handmade paper. And the handmade paper has like this very fabric-like quality to it too. So, I think I had never realized how much fabric kind of comes into what Rauschenberg did. This is another piece that's kind of got a quilty quality to it, to me. This one's called Catastrophe. This is from 1996, so this is closing in on the end of his life. And there's just something very, very quilty about it, like putting together these pieces, and it's the whole is greater than the sum of the parts kind of thing is sort of the way I felt about this. So this is part of the Arcadian Retreat series. And this is the largest of the 25 works that were part of this series, comprising 3 plaster panels. So now he's working with yet another type of substrate. The work has a post and lintel structure that evokes the classical art and architecture represented throughout the Acadian retreats, such as the statue of Dionysus and worn stone column visible here. That's here, Dionysus, and the column. I don't know. There's a lot of things there that could be a column. um, Rauschenberg traveled to Istanbul and Ephesus, Turkey in June 1996 as a participant in the United Nations Conference on Human Settlements, which explored environmentally sustainable urban development. With Catastrophe, the artist took up the themes of development and change, bringing together disparate and asynchronous imagery to highlight the sometimes oddly juxtaposed layers of history one encounters while traveling in an ancient city. And I have just a couple more. This one I love because it's just so chaotic. Let's see. So, as the title suggests, Robert Rauschenberg's Port of Entry, 1998, explores ideas of home, travel, and arrival. Part of the series Anagrams, a pun, it also demonstrates the artist's interest in structures of communication. In an anagram, the letters of a word are rearranged to make a new word. Here, Rauschenberg achieved a similar feat with transfer images. Working with photographs printed on transparent sheets enabled him to experiment with multiple arrangements on the work's 3 large adjoining panels, overlapping and repeating imagery as needed to create a layered yet unified composition. I have to say, I do like the way that San Francisco MoMA and the people that worked on this project have discussed these pieces, because I think it's so easy to get like so high and mighty and ridiculous with these descriptions, that are just like yuck. I think these are a little bit more approachable descriptions. So this, I think they have the wrong information about it. So, maybe not. You know what? This is a combine. Okay, so I was reading the wrong section. So this is a combine. This is earlier in his career. This is the 1950s, and he's putting together all this stuff, and so that's what it needs to combine. This collection, this one, is distinctive for the range and variety of materials it incorporates. So previous to this, he had done these like monochromatic paintings, and so this is a complete departure from that. So collage papers and fabrics are a big part of the combines. So here he gives everyday objects the same prominence as conventional art materials. Comic strips, squirts of oil paint, art magazine illustrations, and a host of textiles jostle for attention, and gestural paint strokes drawn directly from the vocabulary of abstract expressionism carry the same compositional weight as newspaper clippings of car thefts and department store advertisements. So, yeah. It's really hard to see, like, where are the textiles in here? It's hard to tell. We'd have to get up close and personal with this to be able to see, like, what is a textile and what is paper and what is paint. I see something up here that looks like a textile, looks like something floral. So, and that's to me, that's kind of the exciting mystery of this. And then the very last one is called Mother of God. And I don't know why I like this one. I just do. At first glance, there's something about it that, I've seen quilts that have this simplicity, and they are so very, like, they draw you in. And that's what this did for me. So this is from 1950. This is a very early work. And this he did... this is the one where they have the description is wrong. So this one, it says circa 1950. This one he would have done probably while he was at Black Mountain College or right after he left Black Mountain College. And it's just painting on a map. Or maps. It's like a collage of maps. You know, and as striking as this is, I mean, you know, I see quotes that are this simplistic. And I think they get sometimes disregarded because they are this simplistic. But there's a lot going on here if you really look. So, Druid said the hoarfrost. Grayish-white crystalline deposit of frozen water vapor formed in clear, still weather on vegetation, fences, etc. Yeah, so it's that crystal-y, sort of sparkly frost that you see on stuff. And it hasn't been snowing or raining. All right. Well, that's Rauschenberg. Let me go back to me. All right, come on now. Okay. Guys ready for some MDC Crawford? So, MDC Crawford, The Heritage of Cotton. We're coming close to the end. And, you know, he may not be as hilariously funny as, say, the writers of other things, but he really has had a turn of phrase, and I really like his writing, and I'm going to be sad that we're going to leave him soon. So as a reminder, we are reading The Heritage of Cotton by Morris DeCamp Crawford, written in 1924. And we are in the home stretch here. We're in a chapter called Research that I started reading the other day, and it's a really long chapter, and I don't even know if we're going to get done with it today. We did get pretty far. This is chapter 14? Yes. XIV 14. Okay. So we had left off talking about dyeing fabric. And let's see. I forgot to put my little marker here to know which. Okay, so it's going back and forth between England and America, talking about dyes and textile interests. So I'm going to pick up in the middle here of this page, and hopefully I'm not overlapping too much. So, there is little doubt that this relationship between dyes and explosives. Okay, I read this. Remember, this is how, what's his name? Oh gosh, what's the guy? Perkins. Perkins invented mauveine, the dye color, while he was trying to make explosives. So, yes. And all of this is getting kind of mired together with, you know, the changes going on in the world, the Great War, which would have been World War I. World War II has not happened yet. So, okay. Let's see. I see gigantic industries. We definitely read about that. America, independent in regard to dyes. They're not relying on the German chemical interests. Remember, when we're at war, Germany all of a sudden is like, no more dye for you. And so here in the U.S., it was necessary to invent our own dyes. And vat dyes. I remember learning that vat dyes are not just a big vessel of dye. The vat dyes are done under pressure. So I'm imagining that vat dyeing is like a giant pressure cooker, that you put the dye in the guess water or some kind of mordant in there with the fabric and put it under pressure. So now we are going to move on to the cotton gin. So no event since the invention of Whitney's cotton gin, Eli Whitney, has had greater significance for the textile industries than the developments in the artificial silk industry during the last decade. Artificial silk. Do you know what fabric that is? The fabric that was originally called artificial silk. I'm looking to see if he's calling it anything else. He's not. I'll give you a moment to think of what was artificial silk while I read it. In a sense, the exorbitant prices of cocoon silk during the war, again, World War I, when this lovely fiber sold for over $18 a pound. $18 a pound. And silk is very lightweight. So, that's actually probably a lot of silk. Quiltish, nylon. Druid, rayon. Druid, you win. It is rayon. Rayon being a cellulosic fiber that is not actually considered a natural fiber because of all of the chemicals and processing that goes into. So it's wood pulp is what it starts off with. I believe it was probably, if I remember correctly, it was some of the from the paper making industry. They've got that wood pulp, and they're like, hey, we can apply 1,000,000 chemicals to this and get rayon. And there's actually a couple of different processes they use. There's one type of I don't know, sulfuric acids and bleaches and ammonias. And then there's this other side that's another type of chemical distillation. So yes, rayon. Viscose, yes, is also. Viscose and rayon are kind of each side of the same coin. And the processes are different, which makes one rayon and one viscose. So the lovely fiber sold for over $18 a pound, the rapid improvement in knitting machinery, and the high demand for novelty cloths. Novelty cloths. Those, I'm guessing he means like conversation prints. The cute fabric that we like from the early 20th century. So high demand for novelty cloths were responsible for the last great development in this field. But a broader interpretation may be found in the culmination of chemical and physical research in the industry itself. They had arrived at a place after patient research and courageous expenditure of capital that entitled them to the full consideration of all phases of the textile industries. The history of artificial silk curiously begins in about the same period as that of the machines in England. In 1734, the great French chemist Reaumur, 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 right? Reaumur. That's probably close. Made experiments in specially concocted varnishes, which were driven through minute holes in sheet iron and precipitated in brittle and unusable threads. In 1858, Andemars, the Swedish chemist, partially perfected artificial filaments through dissolving the inner bark of the mulberry tree in alcohol and ether. Yay for ether! Just pop on down to the druggist and get yourself a gallon of ether. The great genius of the industry, however, was Count Hilary de Chardonnay. Hilary Chardonnay, who after years of experimentation and devotion, including bankruptcy, finally produced late in the 80s a practical commercial fiber. Chardonnay's process used cotton linters, so that's the hair that comes off the seeds, and cotton waste from combing machines, and reduced it in alcohol and ether, finally changing over to the use of sulfuric and nitric acids, the basic, home pantry acids, and denatrating. So I guess that's like denatured the yarns when wound on the cones and bobbins. This fiber was first shown to the public in the Paris Fair of 1889, and from here begins the real commercial history of the fiber. So I remember having a discussion with somebody about silk and rayon. And, there's this idea that, rayon is a 20th century thing. And it's not, because, this is late 1800s that this process is finally working, but it's in Paris. This stuff is only happening in Paris, and it's not until the 20s that this comes to the U.S. So unless you've got a situation where somebody was obtaining rayon or viscose from England or the continent, then it doesn't make sense that it would have an 1800s date on it as a American native fabric. Is basically what I'm trying to say. So if you see rayon or viscose in a quilt, and you know the quilt dates to, prior to 1922, I believe. I think that we're going to get to that. Then that fabric is not from the US. That fabric is from Europe or the UK by way of Paris. In 1892, 3 Englishmen, Cross, Bevan, and Beadle, developed a cheaper process through substituting wood pulp for cotton. Oh, here we go. And this process, generally known by the name of viscose, occupied for many years the principal place in the quantity market. Ah, fabulous. I am no longer recording on my computer because my computer is out of room. I forgot to move files this morning. Okay. These have been the 2 basic methods upon which all subsequent processes have been developed. But the demands in later years for quality fiber have swung the pendulum of trade sharply in favor of the general principles developed by Chardonnay. And most of the artificial silks now attracting attention are developed from a cotton basis. So cotton linters versus wood pulp. All over the world today, in Italy, Belgium, Germany, France, England, and the United States, there are 57 large concerns in this industry, and the more or less accurate statistics of 1922 give a total output of 70 million pounds. When it is considered that only 63 million pounds of cocoon silk were produced in the same year, the predominance of this industry in a generation will be appreciated. And boy, was he right. In America, the Viscose Company for a long time was the largest producer of artificial fiber and was devoted to the wood pulp basis. This company has recently changed to a cotton basis and produces excellent yarn by the new process. The American Tubize Company, Tubize, an offshoot of a Belgian parent, developed finer yarns of greater strength in comparison to diameter and of greater strength when wet than the viscose. After the war, World War I, the DuPont Company developed an organization for making fiber silk, and the Industrial Fiber Company followed suit. DuPont has been so busy making sponges and fiber silk. Latterly, the chief advantages of artificial silks have been their great diameter as compared to the real silk, which gave to cloth a rather coarse texture, and the fact that under moisture they lost about 70% of their strength. This was a great disadvantage until the public became accustomed to the fiber and learned how to wash and clean it so as not to impair its value. Lately, an English process known as acetate silk, so that's another one, so rayon, viscose, and acetate, and called by the trade name of Celanese, it's Celanese, cellulose, right, has attracted considerable attention. This silk is absolutely waterproof and does not lose any strength, therefore, when wet. The chief difficulty lies in the fact that it is difficult to dye since it is impervious to water, but this disability has been largely overcome by inspired chemical research. Yay, chemicals! All of these fibers have peculiar merits and uses, and their great development during the last few years is proof sufficient that the public has accepted them without question. One of their great advantages for the weaver lies in the fact that they can be cross-dyed with cottons, silks, or wools, or in combination with any or all of these fibers. That is, if the proper fiber for the purpose is selected, a cotton or silk cloth can be woven, immersed in a dye bath that will dye the cotton or the silk, but leave the artificial fiber undyed, and then immersed in a second bath, which will color the fiber but leave the cotton or silk unstained. Very often it is possible to combine the chemicals in the same bath so that 2 colors are produced in a single dyeing. And I mean, if you think about it this way, what it sounds like to me is that, one dye is going to be repelled by the artificial fiber, by the rayon viscose acetate. Well, he's really talking about acetate here, I guess. And then the other dye bath is resisted by the silk and cotton. Although it's really interesting to me, I'd kind of wonder what sort of chemical can dye acetate but be resisted by silk and cotton. Because cotton, I mean, geez, have you ever had a t-shirt, probably a white one, that just was like a magnet for every stain there is? I do. I rarely get white t-shirts because, mustard, ketchup, soy sauce. So yeah, that's interesting to me. I'm kind of curious about that. Many changes can be run on the same theme, and it offers new opportunities for the designer and styler. Obviously, this is another intricate chemical problem, and it must be admitted frankly that the average cotton or silk mill, as the average knitter and dyer, have not been particularly careful in studying out the particular qualities of each fiber and selecting the one best fitted for their needs. Well, that's interesting. Huh. I mean, at this point, wouldn't you think that people would have studied what is best? A greater understanding, however, is growing between the fiber producer and the textile manufacturer. And there is no question that artificial silk of different kinds will play a very large part in the future development of the style business in cotton fabrics. Okay. So I guess what he's saying is up to this point, people had maybe not determined what rayon was good for, and maybe we're putting it to the test in ways that it may have needed further consideration. In a general way, research in mechanical, physical, and chemical fields has been accepted, at least in theory, and the full practice will follow before long. Already, in many ways, American mills are the finest technical units in the world. More static labor populations will tend to vastly improve conditions. Such superiority as exists in certain phases of the British industry is due to longer concentration on some definite problem with greater specialization of machinery and labor trained from generation to generation on specific tasks. Okay. Yeah, I mean, any business is going to be more successful when you don't have to keep training people over and over. You don't have a revolving door, that you get people and they stay and they become experts in what they do. I mean, duh. The common and perhaps natural habit of looking to a tariff to equalize these advantages, and a little too hasty tendency to blame differences in wages and hours of employment in Europe or other sections of this country for conditions, have diverted attention from the essential exhaustive technical analysis and modification of existing systems. William R. Bassett, the well-known industrial specialist, recently made a survey of the textile industries for the Hoover Committee on the Elimination of Waste in Industry. Oh my gosh, during the 20s, the Hoover administration, my God, they loved studies on eliminating waste. They came up with so many. I mean, I feel like the Hoover administration created some of our I guess some of the things that just look like excessive bureaucracy, I guess. I mean, this is the time period 1920s, and I'm pretty sure it was the Hoover administration, released a booklet on standardization of mattress sizes. And Dr. Dutton has a copy. So even though I guess it's saying here, eliminating waste, I feel like a lot of bureaucracy came out of that. Doge, indeed. Okay. In time, his keen analysis of conditions will receive a wider attention from the textile trade than it has so far perhaps attracted. So, William Bassett, industrial specialist. He dwelt with special emphasis on the wasteful methods of buying raw materials and on the evils of speculation in cotton. The evils. But his observations on the training of labor and a greater human coordination seem to me to be of particular significance. Here indeed lies a great field for intensive study. Oh boy. I don't know if that intensive study is something I would want to do, but perhaps Sven Beckert did in his more modern book about this, The Empire of Cotton. From time to time, our cotton industry has been affected by needlessly bitter and rather aimless industrial feuds. Oh, we love a drama, don't we? These difficulties are, in a measure, due to the great diversity of textile labor populations and to a large percentage of absentee ownership. They are largely unnecessary and always very costly. It would seem as though some method short of a mere temporary balance of antagonistic forces might be found. There are, of course, large mill units, as well as small, where labor difficulties have been reduced to a minimum. Such problems as face us today are of an economic rather than a human character. Okay, interesting. I mean, this is 1924. Stock market hasn't crashed yet. The Depression hasn't started. We've only gotten through World War I. So it's going to be interesting where he's coming from here. Few millmen today look upon labor with the cynical eyes of the elder generation. Equally with all minutely divided industries, the cotton mills are open to the attacks of disciplined and organized labor and might easily become the myriad theaters for tragic and sordid dramas of destruction. Saner counsels will, however, prevail. The older, ultra-conservative diehards and the uncompromising radicals will, I trust, never be permitted to make this industry their battleground. Oh, Morris. If the progress of the last 10 years is any guide, the cotton industry is oriented towards some rational form of industrial democracy. With extreme reluctance, I leave the discussion of these problems, which I have only suggested. They are of vital moment. Yet, since they have already been raised and are now under consideration in all sections of the country, I feel it wiser to devote the remainder of this chapter to a field of research only just beginning to attract serious attention. So let me look here. Yeah, this is... I think I don't want to get into this next bit. So I'm going to stop right here. He's going to get in some interesting things, I think. He's talking about the next chapter in the story of cotton will be written by the artist designer. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, we will pick that up on Monday. Yeah, I realize I'm cutting out a little bit early today, but sometimes that's a good thing. So, you guys, just to wrap it up, don't forget, tomorrow is the movie screening, and I will keep an eye on all points of reaching out to me if you decide you want to come. Yeah, just ping me somewhere, and I'll add you. And yeah, as a reminder, I'll get the links out either tonight or tomorrow morning, and I'll do a reminder as it gets close to 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Beyond that, oh hey Jan, okay. Let me just give you the link. Because I need your email address. And it's just easier to do this here. Where are you? Gosh darn it. Where is it? Oh, here we go. Nope, that's not it either. That's not the document. God dang it. Here we go. Okay. Oh, no, you know what? I need to give you the bit.ly. Nah. Here we go. Here we go. It's bit.ly invite me cake. So bit.ly invite me cake. Let me make sure that works. No, it doesn't. I just made a mistake in that. Yeah, Jared, I know you said you have something happening tomorrow, so you may not make it. I understand. I hope to see you, but if not, all good. Nope. There we go. Okay. Let me try this again. Yes, there we go. So yeah, Jan, hit that link and shoot me your information, and then I could get the stream link out to your email. So yeah, anybody else, if you're out there listening and you want, hit me up on Instagram or Facebook, or you can track me down. You guys know where to find me. All right. Take care, guys. I hope to see you tomorrow evening at the movie screening. If not, I will see you on Monday. So have an excellent weekend. I hope, whether you have a Valentine's sweetie or not, that you have a wonderful Valentine's Day. I think Valentine's Day is kind of a BS holiday, but it's always nice to be thought of on Valentine's Day. So if nobody gets you flowers and chocolates, get them for yourself. That's your prerogative. And that's my permission to you. So, all right, guys, take care, and I will talk to you soon. Mwah!